Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of Public Access America. My name is Jason. His name is Jeffrey, and we are together at last for another great recording. It's Thursday, apparently. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Oh, it's another lovely day. It's super foggy out, so it kind of looks like Silent Hill out there.
Mm, love it. One of my favorite video games.
Oh, I love that one. That one was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the remakes, like I would love to see a true from the beginning version remake first person Silent Hill game because I mean the originals were so creepy. It was so good.
It's one of the few games that I actually beat, that I went all the way to the end. That's crazy. Because in Call of Duty, you start in a room. I couldn't get out of the room, dude. Like, So, video games are not my forte. Any positivity this week? What are you doing for your mental health, as Adam would ask?
Ooh, what am I doing for my mental health? I
Hmm.
honestly like this week was insanely busy for me.
Hmm.
I ended up getting some advanced certification, so that definitely felt good to get that done and passed and now I'm all ready to go on the next stage of, whatever I hope is going to come down the pipeline for me. So,
Really, I really wanted to get you and Dan on together to ask you this one question. Why and how and what drives you to learn, whereas other people are the opposite? I like to learn in a certain way, my own pace, my own things, but there's a whole bunch of the country that actively ignores information the way you and Dan like collect it. And I want to know what it is that drives you, in that way.
well, I think it's a couple of there's a couple of things for me at least. Number one is that my grandfather, my grandfather, before he passed away, 93-year-old man, he played guitar every day. And one of the things that he always said about playing guitar was is that he was always learning. And so from there, it's like, yeah, something that you would think as simple as a musical equipment or an instrument, you could still be learning that many years later. You were never done learning. And so like there was that. Like that was kind of already there for me, as someone who I saw as a master said he was still learning. So that if someone that I saw, was a master at good old finger picking country was still learning, then I never had any excuse. So for me, it's there's a few different parts. Number one is I wouldn't say an innate drive to prove myself right as much as it is to prove myself wrong. Because data. The thing about data is that if you do it, if you collect and analyze it properly, and you get as many biases as possible out that you know of.
Mhm.
I will say that you know of. A lot of the times, it's like we don't look to prove ourselves right. We look to prove ourselves wrong. And so if with my idea, whatever it is that I'm thinking of, and I go into that idea that I'm going to prove that idea wrong, it's a pleasant surprise when it comes out that I was right. Um, Whereas if I go in and I analyze something and I prove myself wrong, then it's like, well, yeah, okay, keep going. Um, so learning the drive to prove myself wrong, um, because there's a lot of things that I do right. Like you've probably heard me say this. I would say that I hate the fact that I'm right, but I don't. And that's because there are certain things that I don't want to be right. I really don't.
Right.
And what happens is that when I'm right, it's like fuck. All right, well, now how do we
Mhm.
deal with this? Because if I prove myself right, then that means that now I have to actually deal with something. And there's this little bit of laziness of, well, if I'm wrong, then I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I don't have to deal with it in the way that I think I'm going to have to deal with it. I'll say that. So when I suddenly now have to deal with it, it's like, son of a bitch, damn it, this was not
Yeah.
what I wanted to do.
Oh,
Um,
I feel like now we have I found something that we have in common deep, and I'm like, I like to plot points statistically,
mhm,
societally, to see where society is going, and you're just doing that with like the raw data of what I'm just um instinctively feeling, you know what I mean? So
mhm,
what's nice is when I say something ridiculously in the future, and then the statistics, when I talk to you, you can see the future of that, then I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? It kind
right.
of validates me. I want to learn because I want to be right about what I talk about. And there's times when
Mm,
I'll respond to something and I'll be like, it's incredible that I know as much as I do about something that's stupid, that I can make a comment that, thousands of people liked because because I was that right about something that obvious.
Well, and that's the thing is like there's some things where it's like I know that I'm going to be right about something because my brain is constantly doing the math on things as I'm taking it in,
Right.
and so I'm sitting there looking at something going, okay, I mean the likelihood that my thought is correct is really high, or the
Mm-hmm.
thought, or I'll be sitting there and I'm going, I'm not so sure I'm right about this one. I think I might be wrong,
That's why I love
and
talking to
so
you.
like in my head, like I constantly have that math going. It's like what does the balance of probability look like in terms of me being
Mm-hmm.
right about this one specific idea, thing, group, people, whatever. And so the idea that I can take, something that I've always been good at and apply it rigorously to
Mm-hmm.
find out if, what I'm thinking is correct and be able to test it and prove it over and over and over again is fantastic. But at the same time, a lot of the things that I'm doing, really only provide enough value for me to make determinations on certain things. And more broadly, it's like I'm doing the math and I can tell you broadly where the data is pointed. And there are other people that
Right.
are analyzing this data, and I'm going, yeah, that's going to point in the direction I think it's going to point in. And sure enough, it does. And it's like, well, you can only put so much data up, and at a certain point you go, son of a bitch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you're always going to be missing a factor, and by the time you get that factor, another factor is going to change. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's constantly evolving. But I think between the both of us, it's coming up with the way to message what we know is right in a way that people will understand without assuming we're being assholes. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the tough part is that when it comes down to something being, mathematically, statistically correct, if somebody doesn't want to believe what you're saying, despite your best assertions, somebody's going to say you're an asshole. And that's,
Uh-huh. I hope so.
what is it? George Carlin always said, everybody wants you to be honest until you're honest with them, then you're an asshole.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You
Somebody
know,
we were having another fight about voter IDs, and I was watching the argument, you know what I mean?
mhm.
And this guy finally, he was like, "Fine, obviously this isn't the place for me." And I had to chime in and I was like, "No, this is the total place for you if you're looking for opposing views to what you thoroughly believe. But no, if you're looking for an echo chamber, then yeah, this isn't the place for you." Because it wasn't a there it wasn't a bad discussion. Like, yes, no, if everybody got a voter ID regardless and they rained from the skies, that would be equal, but that's not how it is. And people have to realize that.
Right.
He was saying, well, you need a driver's license to buy alcohol. And I was like, yes, but you don't need a driver's license and to count the amount of jelly beans in a jar to get it. That's the
And the, and
difference.
and the answer really is no, you don't even need a driver's license. Most states
Yeah,
have a state ID that you could get that is
right.
literally just a state ID, no driver's license attached to it.
That's
And
me.
that's perfectly fine. You can
Yeah.
absolutely get a state ID and not have a driving part of it. And that's the difference is that I don't need somebody who has a driver's license in order to vote. I need somebody who has an ID.
Mm-hmm.
And now the question is what does getting an ID look like? And then from
Everywhere
there,
different. Right.
what does having that ID do for your ability to register to vote? And then from there, what does, having registered to vote look like in terms of being able to continue to vote? So, that's the difference is that, everybody's different. So for example, you've got this weird limitation on you have to have a physical address in order to vote. Okay, well, so what you're telling me is that the person who is homeless, who, lives in, the shack up on the
Uh-huh.
hill over here, that he's built out of scrap, is never going to be able to vote.
Right.
Let's say that he doesn't have, for the sake of argument, let's say that he doesn't have any mental health issues. Let's say that he doesn't have any drug or alcohol issues. Let's say that he doesn't have any, uh, let's see here. So we've got mental health, we've got drug, alcohol. He doesn't have any felonies that would prohibit him from voting. Why doesn't he get to vote?
Agreed. Why doesn't he? He needs his vote more than anybody else.
Right. Or, let's say, what is going to be your definition of physical address? When you look at what our voting rights used to look like in this country, it used to be only property owning white men. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody who lives in an apartment, I'm sorry, you don't get a right to vote. You don't own property. You're only renting. You think about that. Does that sound fair?
Not at
That
all.
that
But that's the
that
way it was.
that's exactly it. Or, I
If you had a
mean,
vagina, you couldn't vote.
right, or let alone a different skin color.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so then they changed it to all white men. Okay, so you didn't have to own property, but now you just had to be a white man. Okay, so no women, no people of
Mm-hmm.
color, no Native Americans, nobody that no American citizen that was born in this country without a dick.
Right. You know
So that's
what's
that's bullshit.
what's
Let's.
funny is the 14th Amendment said all men are equal, and they used that to say, see, women aren't equal. So they had to revise it. You know what
Right.
I mean?
You
So I
know,
mean that's how much the verbiage meant. And yeah,
and that's
there's systemic things that
right.
every government tries to do, and
So,
it's an issue.
and here's and so here's where now, we get into a problem, something that you can appreciate. So we had, as you are well aware of, literacy, literacy tests in order to be able to vote.
Hmm. Yeah,
Jason, can you read?
yeah, sure.
If I hand you a piece of paper right now, not using none of your tools to assist you, can you read?
Oh, paper? No,
So you shouldn't be able to vote.
that's right.
That's bullshit.
Because I need
You can,
assistance.
yeah, you understand what it is you're voting for. You understand who it is you're voting for, but you have
Hmm.
to have tools in order to be able to understand the
That's
document
right.
that is ahead of
That
you. It's
that's
not that
right.
you're incapable of understanding it, it's that you have to actually have help. So why then would something like a literacy test be okay? Because yeah,
Exactly.
you are literate, you physically cannot read.
30% of the incarcerated population right now is dyslexic. Sorry. When you
It's
go
an
to
interesting.
literacy, it goes to those literacy facts. But no, you're absolutely right. And right now, assistance is illegal. Like if
Yep.
in Florida, if my roommate gives me a ride to vote, he can get arrested and I can get arrested. And there's poll watchers here now armed. There's a poll police now that can catch me that are looking for things like, and I can't go in there and then just sit unassisted vote. I still need somebody in the booth with me doing the buttons for me. You know what I mean?
So then, so that right there is, I would say, number one, probably a major federal complaint. Number two, I would put it
I
as an
think so
ADA
too.
complaint. I would put
I
it as
think
an
so
ADA
too.
complaint. If that's a federal ADA complaint.
And
As
Jeffrey, you just hit the point. I'm sorry to stop you again. You
go.
just hit the point I've been trying to make. They keep saying that voter suppression is disproportionately affecting Black and brown voters, but statistically, there's 49 million disabled people, 45 million Black people, and if it affects all of the disabled people and some of the Black and brown people, then it is also a disability issue, and you shouldn't be taking this in civil rights charges at the DOJ, you should be looking at it as an infraction of the ADA on reasonable accommodations. And I can't get that message across. That I mean, I have messaged the DOJ like 3 times, like, why aren't you going at this as a discrimination thing from the ADA? You know, it's faster. And I'm sorry to say this, white people care. They
I
don't
mean,
care
that's the reality.
if you say voter suppression is affecting black and brown people, white people are like, oh, so we're good. You know.
But at the moment that you say that, well, that voter suppression could affect a conservative white man, suddenly it's, all
Right.
arms are on the table, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, okay, well, that's, the reality is that, if you were born in America, you should have the right to vote, period, end of story.
Of
We do
course.
have laws that have removed people's rights to vote. I think that's a better conversation to have.
Critical race
uh,
theory. Yeah.
um you know and I honestly think that we need to have that discussion about, you know if I have to register for the selective service, right, when I turn 18, why am I not required to register to vote, or
Right.
because one of the things is it's a lot easier to keep your access to voting once you've registered than it is to get your fucking registration to begin with.
Yep.
So that's just it, is that, if you're going to require kids to register for the selective service, fuck it, require everybody to register to vote while you're at it,
We
and
should be.
make that a part of high school. Like, there's selective service registration day and voter registration day. Those are things that you do on a specific day as part of your American government class. Why? Because that's a part of American government, period, end of story. And I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. And oh my God, would people lose their shit?
I
you
agree.
know and
But
unfortunately, I think that you're going to have a couple of issues at hand. Number one is, if there's any kids that have been to juvie, what does that mean for them and their ability to register to vote, or register for selective service? As far as I'm aware of, you're required to register for selective service regardless.
that's fine. I don't think your right to vote should be stripped away because of any crime you commit. I just don't. One vote, you get one vote, and
All right, what
you
about voter
deserve that.
fraud?
You still get your vote. I still think you should get your vote.
Interesting. Okay.
I
I
do.
had to
I don't think you should voter fraud, like, but I don't think you should be, even a murderer gets his vote, I think, and it should be just that simple. If it's going to be that black and white, then everybody should get it. We shouldn't selectively deny it and then just keep increasing that like a frog in water to me.
Hmm, that's fair. That's
Yeah,
I think that's a fair discussion, because why, what is it about having your right to vote stripped that is so important? Like, there's certain things that we get penalized for, in terms of, um once you're convicted. For example, Farmer Bro is going to be barred from the pharmaceutical industries for the rest of his life
good.
over his crimes.
And
And
as a felon, he loses his right to vote.
mhm. And so the question is, should he lose his right to vote?
No.
Should he be barred from the pharmaceutical industry for the rest of
Oh,
his life?
yes.
And
Yes.
that's the difference, is that there are certain things that I do believe that you shouldn't be allowed to do, depending on the crime that you've been convicted of. I think that's absolutely going to always be the case, and I do think that there are ways for people to redeem themselves in other ways. Arizona, I just got this. I just saw this. They're going to be piloting a program for people who can get released to help them get their CDLs, because there's a major truck driver shortage.
Good. Yeah.
I think that's fantastic, and
That is.
this is something that we've talked about. This is something that we've said needed to be done. Get people the ability to do a job,
Right.
the training to do the job, and I guarantee you will probably see a substantial reduction in recidivism.
Yes, and then give them their vote. It sounds so simple, but it makes you part of a greater society to have it, you know?
Now imagine if you did that with more than just truck driving. We've
Yes.
got so many pieces of the puzzle that are missing in this country. We got a lot of people in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would rather see people get training in prison system and come out with their slate completely cleaned, like it's
Me
supposed to
too.
be.
Yeah.
You've paid your debt to society. Now go forth and be productive in society. Because guess what? Has anybody seen how much a truck driver makes?
Enough to live.
It's a
Heck
lot of
yeah.
damn money. It's a lot of damn money,
Yeah.
especially right now.
Yeah.
You got truckers that are making over 100 grand a year right now being truck drivers.
But that my favorite Bernie quote is it costs $80,000 a year to house an inmate. It costs $35,000 in Pennsylvania to educate a student. I don't understand why prisons aren't surrounded by trade schools, welding, craftsmanship, mechanics, agriculture, anything that they want. They should just be complexes of education that way. And you would find that somebody doing an 8-year term could come out with not only their GED, but their associates, and go on to be something. But if you have that person come out and you deny them from being a part of society, no matter how educated, that sucks because we want those people to have their vote.
Well, and that's the thing is I want people to be productive and then be able to have their right to vote as
Right.
more so than just have them have their right to vote. Because,
Oh, okay.
I think at a base level, everybody should just have the right to vote, period.
Me too.
Um,
All the time.
we can talk about, what appropriate age is, because once again, I'm hearing the push to get 16-year-olds to vote. And I'm like, you know,
I like the idea of having their votes, but I don't. I don't want to call it the 3/5 thing because that's gross. But
no,
I think
well,
I think that they should be a part of the process, so they acknowledge it. But I also don't think they should be given the same weight of people that have responsibility in society.
to me, and to me, it's either you give them
Right?
full rights, access, privileges, or you don't.
Then you
And
don't.
and to me, it's like, well, we already have precedent that, in pretty much every aspect of society, at 18 you're allowed to do any number of things legally on your own, and I think that
If
that makes
yeah,
sense.
if it's
and
legal for
and
you to die for your country, it's legal for you to participate in it. Yes.
Exactly. And so unfortunately, if, at 16, if you don't have those same rights and abilities to do at 16, then I'm sorry, I don't think you should have the right to vote. Now we could talk about whether or not 16-year-olds should have, any sort of legal standing. I will tell you that at 16, I was a numbskull, but
Me
that's
too.
just me. I also know some 16-year-olds currently that I would be like, you know what, you're farther ahead than I ever was. And it's
Mhm.
entirely possible that you could, but you can't make that argument for everybody. And I would also say that you can't make that argument for some of the 18-year-olds, because let's face it, I knew some fucking numbskull 18-year-olds when I was
Yeah.
in high school. So
I was
there's
not
that.
I was a numbskull till I was about 47. So, but how would you feel about when you maybe you could register to vote in local elections when you get your driver's license?
No,
No? Okay.
no, if you're going to give them the right to vote, you can't be partial. It's either all or nothing.
Okay. Well, I'm not for
Because
all
because
right now.
because what then would make you say that, oh no, you're totally trustworthy to vote locally but not
Okay.
federally?
That's
That
fine.
doesn't make any sense.
Then I would go with no unless somebody wants to offer me an opposing opinion here that changes my mind. I
Yeah.
just don't think they want it, so I'm not going to push for it when I don't have my vote yet.
Well, and I think especially like at least, like at least in terms of like, when you hit 18, you've got
Mhm.
people who have at least taken US history and American government. So you at
Yeah.
least have
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
foundational knowledge. Look, we all know that at 18 we're corrupted by either A, our parents' worldviews, or B, our favorite celebrities' worldviews. And we
Hmm.
haven't really had a chance to form our own foundations in most cases. Because I can tell you at 18 I voted conservative. Why? Because that's what I was surrounded with. That's what I knew. That's what made sense. And as I started to learn, it was like, okay, I would start to vote a little bit more liberal, but Montana liberal, because like our
Right.
governor was a Democrat at the time. And really it wasn't like this huge swing in difference of opinion. Montanans usually were kind of like, whatever you do, you just leave me out of it. I
Is
don't
that
give a
Steve
shit.
Bullock?
No, that was Brian Schweitzer.
Oh, okay.
Bullock came after.
Gotcha. He was a
Um,
Democrat, but he was a very, very centrist Democrat.
well, and so was Schweitzer. But here's the thing:
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah.
Schweitzer also had a Republican lieutenant governor. So the idea was, it's like, look, if I'm going to be governor of the state, then the idea is that both parties need to be on the same page. And under Schweitzer, Montana did great. I mean, given the issues that Montana had to face, and we came off of a pretty awful Republican governor at the time, but we did pretty well considering. I would say under Bullock things went to shit, and that's why they end up with Gianforte.
Well, then
So
I think maybe it's up to parents then to take your kids through the process when they go through the process. I really want kids to hit the ground running so they don't fall into any traps of not voting. Like, I really think it's important. I don't,
I think it's I think it's important for parents when they are voting, like to show them the process. And
yeah,
this
yeah,
is what we've
yeah.
done with ours. It's is that we show them, it's like, look, here's the voter pamphlet, here's what we're looking at, here's how we're reading this. And it's like, now look, here's what this person says their platform is, and here's what this person says their platform is. I don't agree with person A's platform, so I'm voting for person B. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a couple of candidates with opposing views that have really good platforms.
Sure.
That's like, here for the longest time, you had Secretary of State Kim Wyman, who was a Republican. And
Right.
and you had Democratic, secretaries of state that were trying to oust Kim Wyman. But overwhelmingly, people kept voting for Kim Wyman in a state that leans very far left.
And
And the question was,
she's in the Biden administration now, right?
correct. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's doing cybersecurity for elections, for U.S. elections now,
Fuck
which is
yeah.
great. Kim Wyman was her mentality was is that look, I believe that everybody fundamentally should have the right to access the vote, and that my job is she viewed the Secretary of State not as a partisan thing, but as a my job is to protect certain things, and that goes beyond party.
Technocrat. It's a
Yeah,
technocrat.
and so she tended to make some enemies from the Republican side because she wouldn't push for the big lie. And I mean, even in this state, it was like, you really think that somehow the Republican governor was going to win Seattle? The Republican governor candidate was going to win Seattle? No.
Mm,
Like, no. I mean, that's a fever fucking dream right there. The answer is no. That was never going to happen. Now, I'm not saying that, you didn't need to find somebody different to Inslee, but there was no fucking way in hell that a Republican was going to oust Inslee, especially when you've got Seattle. Wasn't going to happen. It's a nice
gotcha.
try, nice thought, but no. Now, if you had, yeah, and especially with the candidate that was offered, who was, the big lie, and Trump this and Trump that, and you know, had no experience being a politician, he was just a cop. It's like, yeah, that's not fucking happening. If you had come up with, I honestly think that, you might have had a better chance of seeing a real discussion about what a candidate would look like if, say, Kim Wyman ran against Inslee. Because, people had voted consistently for Kim Wyman being a Republican.
Right. I think people don't understand that there is this reasonable moderate Republican working behind the scenes in a weird Republican party where the national party is way off base from local Republicans. And it's just to me
Right.
it's very strange. It's a very strange dynamic. And like everything else we talk about, we go Republicans suck, and then the good Republicans are like, no, we really don't. And they're like, Democrats suck, and Democrats are like, no, we don't. Like,
And,
I don't know.
and it's this weird polarized time period, and
Mhm.
these weird loud voices keep getting put at the head of the party. And it's like, look,
Right.
look, I know plenty of people who are Republican who I would say are very well grounded. It's just, they have a different view on, certain things, like, the fiscal sector of government and how Constitution should be interpreted. And
Hmm.
they don't believe that the election was fucking stolen, and they don't believe these crazy things. But when you're a part of a party that keeps saying really stupid shit, like somehow, as we found out over the last week, that somehow January 6th is now legitimate political discourse.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. But before we get there, I want to say libertarians were born from Goldwater. Goldwater said it's not us, it's them. They're ruining our country. And every 10 years, a Donald Trump has come up from McCarthy and Goldwater to Nixon to Reagan to Trump. Like these guys come up and they divide America. They think America is weak and they keep testing the fences, but we're not weak. I wanted to say that America
No.
is not weak. And like Putin thinks America's weak. We're not weak. Like, brothers and sisters, we fight like cats and dogs, but fuck you. Like, we will
Don't
come
get me wrong.
together, you
There
know?
there are there are groups of people out there within this country that think that America is weak and that somehow it's all going to fall apart and there
But
will
I
be
think
this
they're just
great civil war.
they're
But they're
only they've always been there. They're only louder because they have a megaphone on social media. Like
right.
there's always been Nazis. Like I remember the Blues Brothers. I hate fucking Illinois Nazis. They've
It's
always been
true.
around. It's just they didn't,
Exactly.
and so they have an outsized voice. But and now they're scared because like Texas is 50% minority. The country itself is like 42% minority, and white people have been pushed to the point of panic. They want theirs now. They're trying to carve out their space in something they think is going to go um,
And
diversified pretty quickly.
if you followed the news, that's been getting pushed pretty hard because how many states have had their new voter registration maps or their
Right.
their legislative district maps shot down by their Supreme Courts?
Yeah. But the truth is you're never going to be able to gerrymander 70%. You know what I mean? Like
Best of luck.
eventually Texas is going to be 70% minority, and you're not going to be able to get the numbers that you wanted to get, even if you gerrymander and rig the system. It's just not going to work because the
And
same
that's the
system you're rigging and setting up, Democrats will get power of at
right.
some point. And so you have to protect your system while rigging the system. And Republicans aren't doing that. Ron DeSantis says you can't talk about race in Florida, but Florida is the place where most white supremacist groups are. You silenced all the white supremacist groups by saying they can't talk about race, but you put it in a bill that says you can't talk about race from a black perspective. No, you can't talk about race. You didn't say slavery, you said race. And now every white supremacist is on the hook if some Floridian says, I don't like your shirt, I'm going to take you to court for 10 grand. That's not Ron DeSantis's plan. Ron DeSantis said you couldn't protest. If you were more than three people that looked like you were protesting and you got hit by a car, that person driving the car could not be charged with a crime. But if you see three people in MAGA hats and you're a fucking Antifa freak, you can run them over and just say the law is. And so Republicans aren't thinking about the future. They're thinking about the now. It's so short sighted. And that's my problem with that.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. It's absolutely insane. But yeah,
yeah.
this is what happens when you don't think about what happens if somebody uses that law against you. It's one of
Yeah.
those things. It's like the filibuster, for example. I get why people want to remove the filibuster,
Yeah.
but if you think that Democrats have such a solid party that they'll never lose another election again, I hate to say it, we know that's not true. And the way things are going right now, if you remove the filibuster and the Republicans win the House, Senate, and presidency again,
Hmm.
you're going to see some shit. Now, if the
Yeah.
Republicans decide to remove the filibuster, then hey, Hippocrates.
Well, they're going to. That's the whole thing. They're going to.
Oh, it'll be hilarious when they do, because then they don't get to complain about whatever,
Right.
crazy radical leftist whatever fucking bullshit. It's like, look, it shouldn't be the way that it is currently at all. If you have something that you disagree with, remove it, try to pass it solo, move
Yeah.
on from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
break things up. Stop trying to pass these massive fucking things on voice vote and
That's
actually sit down and go, hey, what can we all agree on? Well, we can all agree on this. Hey, how about we pass this one? Let's get this off. Let's get this one signed and done. So that way we can,
yeah.
have discussions on, the things that are going to be harder to talk about and approach it from a little bit different perspective. The idea that, like, for example, the whole, electric charging station infrastructure, like the idea that, that's, shouldn't be part of infrastructure is a bit insane simply because, I think that you could definitely do that one of two ways. You could either pass tax incentives for companies like Tesla or Chevron or Shell or whoever to put
Right.
electric charging stations in there.
Amazon could do it if they wanted. Who
Yeah,
cares?
you could literally incentivize it in a number
Sam's
of
Club.
ways.
Right.
The biggest thing that you're going to have to make sure of is, do you have the electrical feed coming in to be able to power that? Do you have
Sure.
do you have the electrical power generation? I want to say that
Because you couldn't
uh
do that in Texas right now.
no,
Right? No.
because I want to say I want to say is it the Biden administration is actually championing a new nuclear plant that is going to be
Yes.
built in Wyoming.
Yes,
And I'm like, great.
that's the plan, is to build these things in Central America and then have the infrastructure, the lines, which is what cost the towers and lines. That's what costs the money to put those lines going to the infrastructures. But start building, yes, to start building infrastructure for a new generation. That's what the
Right.
that's
And
what the
great. You know
deal
what?
is.
Wyoming wants nuclear power. Great. Montana wants nuclear power. Great. North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't give a shit who.
Right.
Fucking send it. If if Washington doesn't want nuclear power, great. Or if Eastern Washington wants nuclear power, great. Whatever. You
That's not
know?
the only power there. That's not an exclusive deal. Like Texas right now, their wind and solar is outperforming the gas. You know what I mean?
Great.
It's not that that's causing the power outages. It's the infrastructure that has 70,000 to 100,000 people without power right now in Texas. And
Yeah.
somebody tweeted about that, and I was like, well, just keep electing Republicans. The books they burn will keep you warm in these difficult times.
Ooh, that's spicy.
But I also said I know there is good people in Texas,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I don't know how to help. I want to have sympathy for them, but god damn, you're just off the rails. Like
Yeah.
I can't endorse you, Texas, not in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you got to
Anything
get your
about
party
it.
under control. And here's the reality is
You
that
gotta get your state under control. What the
I don't
fuck?
think books should be banned, period. End of story. And this
You
is coming from
yeah.
somebody who's read the Communist Manifesto and Mein Kampf.
You
So,
banning books in the internet age is performative. Why are they performing it? You know what I mean? It's
well, they're like,
because
well,
they
we
have a
don't want to have
fear.
it at, we don't want to have it at school.
Oh my
It's like,
God, then you don't
oh,
want computers at your school? It just doesn't make sense. Do you not want the internet in Texas? Like, how are
the,
you going to ban mouse
seriously,
from Texas?
the number of kids that the number of things that kids are reading, it's like, oh, we're concerned about mouse, something that's an allegory to the Holocaust. I mean, I'm like, meanwhile your kids looking up fucking furry porn
Yeah,
on their phones,
just
and you're like, you're
ask
concerned about a Holocaust represented.
Billie
Fuck you.
Eilish what she was watching when she was fucking 13. It wasn't mouse fucking porn, it was porn.
It's like, what the fuck, and that's the thing is like, it's this the idea that that anybody can, any school district can ban books, that's a really bad precedent.
It does. It
I don't
does.
believe in book banning, because that's what the authoritarian left did under Soviet rule, and it's what the authoritarian right did under Nazi rule.
Hey,
Book
Jeffrey,
banning is terrible, period.
liberals are doing it right now to Joe Rogan.
And that is an interesting one in
But
and of
it's the same
itself.
thing, and they don't see it as the same thing. Like, this was my problem with Donald Trump's administration. It's my problem with how we address Joe Rogan. We try and silence him instead of standing in line to be a counterpoint on his show. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't agree with the shit that Joe Rogan is saying, fucking hound him, email him, tweet him, tell him you want to be on his show because he's wrong. Get on there, influence people that are on there to change the opinion. But don't fucking just try and cancel it. You're not going to get rid of Joe Rogan because you got him off of Spotify, because like you said, he's on Apple Podcast, he's on Google Play, Player FM, YouTube, TuneIn Radio, the Stitcher
Right.
Smart Radio app, and more. He's everywhere. But what's important is that you promote indie voices like ours to fill the space around him. You know what I mean? And so,
Exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's, part of the increased scrutiny that he's gotten. Turns out he's used the end grenade a few times
of course, and
on his
yeah,
podcast. And that's
Joey Diaz said he used to make comics suck his dick to get spots. It's all really gross. He's always been gross. That's my point.
And so, and this is one of those things, like, does it, should he have a level of accountability for his actions and his words? Absolutely. The thing is that, whether people want to believe it or not, Joe Rogan has had a number of very different guests on
Yes,
his show. I mean, the dude has had Neil deGrasse Tyson on there a number of times.
sure. Yes.
And so does
Counterpoints. That's what I'm trying to get at. He
so
has,
so yeah, but I mean, he needs to, somebody posted, wonder what the left would do if Joe Rogan brought Fauci on, and I laughed at that one because that's how fickle that's how fickle many people's minds are. People loved the Rogan podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yay, science! Joe
yes.
Rogan's good. People
Yeah.
loved the podcast when he had Elon Musk on there smoking a joint.
Right.
Yay, weed normalization has this dumb fuck on there that doesn't know what he's talking about, and these unproven COVID treatments. Boo, cancel Rogan. It's like,
But
okay, we'll bring Fauci on and watch what happens. Is it really going to be that fickle?
but
Because
he
I don't
should.
believe
That's
that
what
it
I'm saying. That's what I'm
exactly.
saying. Fauci should be like, I want to be on your show. Instead of, here's what Joe Rogan said. I took ivermectin in a course of many things, including vitamin D, vitamin B, the vaccine when I could get it, monoclonal antibodies. Ivermectin was a part of his routine. And it was this Donald Trump thing. Let's split what he said and just get mad at him for the one thing. He's said other worse things since then, but that's where the point where I noticed it starting,
Hmm.
where we were dividing up what he says. He has a 3-hour show, Jeffrey. And
Hmm.
much like us, he has to push his um his guests in the direction he wants the general conversation to go, and he might do that by
Hmm.
saying something stupid. I do that by saying stupid things to you and then seeing where it goes. I'm not defending him. I think that people should
Right.
listen to him or listen to us. Just don't feed into Joe Rogan if you don't get Joe Rogan, but you
I think
should be a part of it.
my favorite has been the Joe Rogan is what Joe Rogan is to men, what Paltrow is to women.
Maybe. I don't know
Because
anything about Gwyneth Paltrow.
she's got some weird shit that she pushes, and I'm like,
Maybe.
bruh, like yikes. Like what was
Yeah.
it, one like a steamed vagina thing she was pushing? I'm going, don't steam your vagina,
Oh, that's right. No,
don't
don't
do that.
steam your vagina. Let me do that for you.
Don't
Good
steam,
Lord.
like that's a terrible decision. Don't do that.
You
um
you just can't replace a partner's loving mouth. You know what I mean?
it's true. It's
And
true.
the other thing is, if you don't believe in masks, I don't give a fuck that you don't believe in masks, but you don't have to tell the world that they don't work because you don't alone believe in them. I don't tell the world that they do work just because I do fucking believe in them. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's the thing is like, what we know is that, are there masks that are very, 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 they're far less effective? Yes, there are.
Maybe.
What do we
Yeah.
There are, and there are studies that have shown it's like, what a cloth mask looks like, what a surgical mask looks
Hmm.
like, what an
I'll have that. I'll
N95 looks
have
like.
that conversation, but I don't want the
Absolutely.
conversation with, oh, well, this mask doesn't work, so fuck all masks altogether. If you believe that, keep it to yourself. Don't wear a mask. I don't give a fuck, but don't promote the theory,
Right.
unless you have evidence.
It's like,
Sorry.
that's when you go, all right, when's the next time you're going under the knife? And then tell the surgeons, don't wear a mask. He doesn't believe in it. It'll be fine. You know
I
what any
know, right?
surgeon will do? They'll look at you and go, what the fuck are you talking about? We know masks during surgery work. We have years
Yeah.
upon years of studies that show that the simple
Uh-huh.
task of adding a mask during surgical has improved good outcomes during surgery. We know this is true, just like we found out hand washing before you do a surgery, improve the
Right.
possibility that the person going under the knife is going to live. There have been a number of things that we have done that we know work. Now, like you said, we can have the conversation about what is and isn't as effective. The
Right.
reality is that a cloth mask does offer some protection. It's not a lot, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit down and tell you that it's completely ineffective, but in terms of efficacy goes, it's the quote unquote better than nothing option.
Right. No,
It's
I get that. But then there is people on Twitter saying masks they don't work at all. There's no proof behind it. Like, if you believe that the election was stolen, come at me with fucking data and evidence and say it, or don't say it at all because you don't have the proof of it yet. Go looking for the proof. Don't tell me you're right, you know?
Right. And or my personal favorite is the one about, all of the deaths from the vaccine that are not being reported. I'm like, okay, so where is your proof that this data exists?
That's right. That's what
And
I'm
they're like, well,
tired
you
of.
can't, well, they're not showing it because it's like, okay, well, you can't sit there and tell me that all these people are dying, but then fail to offer proof of that.
That's right.
That would be no different than me telling you that, the flying spaghetti monster is real, but then failing to offer proof of it.
That's
The
right.
reality is that have there probably been deaths from the vaccine? Yes. In fact, we do know of plenty of deaths that have happened with AstraZeneca. We
Mm,
know that. And guess what happened? The US banned that vaccine.
right.
And it's not because it came from some third world country, it came from the UK. And we saw the risks were too high for Americans. So we said, no, we're not going to use that vaccine.
Right.
So, I mean, the reality is that are there deaths associated with the vaccine? Probably. Are there deaths that are going to be attributed to the vaccine? Maybe, maybe not. I guarantee you that if you had some severe health issues and then got vaccinated, there is definitely a chance that under the stress that your body was already under, the vaccine
Yes.
pushed your body in a direction that probably didn't help. I
Right.
guarantee you that's going to be the case. But if you're known as the fucking fry, you're known for eating the fucking fattiest foods, the greasiest shit, you have health problems as it is, and then you go, you're already being told that you need to be on all these different medications to take care of your health, your heart, your lungs, your whatever,
Mm, mm,
and you're not doing it, and then you go get the vaccine and suddenly, you have an issue and you end up in the hospital. I'm going to tell you right now that the vaccine probably didn't help,
right.
but it was probably the last 10% that you needed and the other 90% that you'd already done. That said, what that also means then is that when you have people that have this level of health issues, you also need to be looking at potentially how do you dose, redose properly so that way you can avoid these kinds of issues. We
Right.
go at this with a very broad hammer, and I do think that, for the most part, that's going to be absolutely what people need to do and deal with. But I will say that when you have people that have significant health issues that should get vaccinated, what that also means is that we perhaps need to look at a different approach in getting them to the point of vaccination where we're not
Yes.
tipping them over the edge.
At the broad stroke, but individual care at some point. It has to come down to individual specific situations created just for them and their safety. You know,
Right.
you can't mandate it. Like, so I have a thing here that says, I just thought about this, that mandates would be over already if it wasn't for people fighting mandates. And it seems like silly, simple, stupid people are prolonging their own pandemic. you know?
And oh yeah, they're so we've talked about this before, and here's how I feel about mandates in general. Mandates mean absolutely nothing if there is no actual punishment to go with a mandate. You can sit down and tell me that I'm required to do whatever, but when I ask you what the punishment is and you say nothing, then what the fuck is there actually to do? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, you have to get vaccinated. Great. What happens if I don't? Well, nothing.
Right.
Okay, so what is the driver then? The hope that I do something good? For a lot of us, yes, the answer is that of course we're going to go get vaccinated. We're going to go get vaccinated if there wasn't a mandate. And the reason
Right.
why is because, we have care for ourselves, we have care for others around us. And that's not to say that people that are refusing the vaccine don't have that. There's a lot of people that are refusing the vaccine because they can't get vaccinated, but they're
That's
being
right.
lumped in with this other group that is just flat out refusing and being fuckheads about the whole thing.
There's 100 million unvaccinated. You can't get vaccinated if you're under 5 effectively yet.
Not
And
yet.
there's hesitancy under 11. And then there's about 20 million people that are immune compromised or in some other way really legitimately cannot get the shot. So that boils down to about 60 million hardcore I'm not getting the vaccine people. And so yes, it's like everything else we do. We talk about one group, they're talking about another group. You know what I
Right.
mean? We're like,
And so
protect the people that can't, and they're like, we don't want it, personal freedom, but you're going to hurt the people that can't. We don't care, we don't know them, we're hurting you, the people that are. And it's this weird circle jerk of logic, I think we keep calling it.
and that's the thing is that I don't know what to tell people. It's like, look, there are people that haven't gotten the vaccine and got COVID, and they are still struggling. And I know people who
Yeah.
have gotten the vaccine, got COVID, and yeah, it was a rough ride, but they've recovered. I know people who've gotten COVID and they haven't gotten shit. So
Yep.
it's all over the place. But here's the thing: is that when you look at what the likelihood of recovery looks like post COVID, people who have gotten vaccinated prior to getting COVID do a lot better than people who didn't. People who get vaccinated after having COVID seem to recover more than they would have if they didn't get vaccinated after having COVID, but they're still not in as good of a position as people who got vaccinated before getting COVID.
Somebody's doing I think it was Canada. Canada had to extend their time frame between vaccines to 9 months, I think it was, instead of 6. And they found that there was actual more benefits to that.
It's there's been a few different tests that have
Yeah.
been run throughout the world. So you've got some that are extending the timelines. You've got some that are actually shortening the timelines,
Yeah. Yeah.
you've got some that are looking at fourth shots. Israel's looked at a fourth shot, and they did a fourth shot regimen, and they're finding that a fourth shot offers no additional benefit for most people,
That's
except for
right.
the severely immunocompromised.
There's going to be a limit to what a vaccine can do at boosting your immune system. There's only so many
Right,
times you can jerk it. And that's about
right.
once a year, I would imagine. You know what I
And I
mean?
think that's ultimately where it's going to get to is that
Yeah.
about once a year you're going to get your booster, and it's going to be tailored to whatever might be going around at the
Yeah.
time. It'll be nice. My hope is that right now it's 100 days to tool up a new booster. My hope is that they'll be able to cut that down even faster. They cut it in half and then in half again and then maybe in half
Hmm.
again. And then you've got the question of production and distribution and all that other fun stuff.
Hmm.
My hope is that we get to the point where number one, we treat coronavirus with a pan coronavirus vaccine. The mRNA
Right.
vaccines have been highly effective in what I would consider stopgaps, um,
Right.
because it's keeping people from getting severely sick, but it doesn't address the fact that the virus mutates. Whereas if you get a pan coronavirus vaccine, that should address that. Period.
Right. The
And
core
that's
of the
where
the core of the virus, not the
right.
spike, but the
and
core.
then and then you have this other stopgap that's now being produced, that is a pill that is a protease inhibitor for the actual
Right.
virus itself. And
That
then I believe
scrambles your DNA so that the COVID can't attach to it during that
right.
time.
and
Yeah.
then you have and then you have
Fucking awesome.
Novavax, and
Science
then
is
you have
fucking awesome.
Novavax, which is actually using part of the virus in order to create more of like an attenuated vaccine like what we're used to. And it's
Right.
highly effective. So the reality is that mRNA is like this great initial creation stopgap. Let's stop
Right.
what's going around, and then we'll get to something that's a lot more effective in more than just a variant. We'll get something that's more effective pan disease, and then
Right.
from there we'll get something that is you know even more effective yet. We're going to have more tools, we're going to have more possibilities, we're going to have a lot more things that are going to be able to address people getting sick and not have to worry about this. But in the meantime, like if your judge is personal freedom, okay, well, you have personal freedom to do whatever it is you want then, I guess. But here's the problem: there is no bed for you
Right.
right now. And it's not that I'm saying that you can't go get one. I'm saying that the hospitals are fucking full. There is no bed for you. You're going to be coughing in a fucking parking lot and hoping that they can get you in sometime soon. Fortunately, I know some people who they have a family member on a ventilator right now, and they're probably going to be saying goodbye this week.
And I know that's coming. That's what I was trying to say a couple weeks ago. Healthcare doesn't care about you. They're full. And you're not like a patient, you're a product, and they're just trying to get you past them in whatever way they can. And if that means
Mhm.
shoving a tube down your throat and walking out the door, that's what they're going to do. They can't invest their emotions anymore in their patients. And that's going to suck for their patients.
And they're running out of time because guess what? When
Hmm.
you have that many patients, you ain't got the time.
Right.
It's what we call crisis standards of care.
Yeah. You
So
can,
you might be getting the bare minimum, but you're probably getting less
yeah, because you're being triaged.
because there's nobody else in the hospital system to help you.
Right.
Period.
That's what I was trying to say. Like
So
you don't want to push the system that's already collapsed twice, you know?
so then the question becomes, how do you get more people into the system? Because this is a problem that is not, this is a problem that is not only is it unique to the time period, but it was unique to the time period. The shortage of healthcare staff was prevalent before COVID hit and has only since served to highlight it even further.
And exasperate it because people are
So
leaving the institutions in droves.
so the question that some people are going to have to sit down and answer is, what do we have that gets people into the healthcare pipeline faster, or in a greater quantity? And you're
Yep.
going to have to look at a couple of things. You're going to have to, I would say that nursing needs to be a trade program that people are able to get into faster, that, in cases like now, the government looks at paying for, if that's the case.
Oh, so we
Or
should
we
put
look at
let's put a nursing trade school by our prison then.
or if you can, if not, then where do we have our options of getting more nursing trade schools so that way we can get more quantity of healthcare,
Right.
because the current system is not working. The shortage was there beforehand, it's worse now.
In fact, let's put one by our foster system too. And maybe by our immigration system. I like that. Sorry. Thank you for listening to Public Access America. He's Jeffrey. I'm Jason. That was our Thursday show. We will be back this Sunday for even more exciting conversation. I never did get to ask you the question. Should Democrats um have a peaceful political discord all over the RNC?
Oh,
You know
the
what I
the
mean?
legitimate political discourse.
Yeah, I think that's where we were at. And I was just wondering what's good for the goose or it's good for the gander. Do unto others as others have done unto you. Like what rule from the Lord don't we use?
Well, I mean, look, I guess if that's the direction that they want to go and they want to call this all legitimate political discourse, then man, I can't wait to see what legitimate political discourse looks like every 4 years. You
That's what
know,
I'm saying. Is this the new normal of protesting? Like we can't just peacefully protest anymore about issues, we have to actually attack. And they did, right? That's one thing I wanted to simply ask you. Was 1/6, they call it an insurrection. Would you call it an insurrection? Would you call it storming the Capitol? Are these words hyperbolic or do they aptly describe what happened? Just simply, was it?
here's what I will say based on what I can tell. I believe that Trump incited a group of people and that group of people acted.
Okay.
But there were insurrectionists and seditious elements that were just looking for an excuse.
That's my
And
point.
those people are being charged with sedition.
Right.
So I think it's another one of those. It's like, you know, those broad things that we've looked at, and I think that uh, there were people around Trump that kept him from doing what he could have done and actually gone into sedition and treason.
Sure, sure,
But
sure.
I think that we were a hair thread away from it.
But but one
Because
six, the attack on the Capitol, it was an attack. It was an
no, there was.
insurgence. It was a storming, and you know what I mean. That's what I'm trying to get at. When you break in and enter
Mhm.
a public building, not you know not for you to break into. That's in this insurrection when it's a government building, right? Like that's storming a building if it's storming something. Like these aren't hyperbolic words. These are words I'm trying to figure out a word that would work on the right and the left, you know?
So, so at its very base minimum, an insurrection is a violent uprising against an authority or a government.
Okay.
So, I mean, in terms of if we're going to use basic definitions, yes, it was an
Okay.
insurrection. Like if you want to go with the Webster's dictionary version of what happened on January 6th, it's an insurrection. Now, I think that sedition is definitely a more interesting one because that involves
Mhm.
this greater conspiracy and plot against the government, and that's what you're seeing also charged.
There
Because
was
people,
three rings, right? Yeah.
you're seeing insurrectionists charged with a bunch of minor infractions
Hmm.
that are going to fuck them hard.
Right.
But now you're seeing people who tried to coordinate and do things and stage things, and they are being charged with sedition. And
Right.
I think that is probably more accurate. Is that you've got insurrectionists, and within that insurrection you had seditionists. And so that
Okay.
has been absolutely that's let me look this up here real quick. Yeah. Uh,
I mean, then what? I mean, because some people are like, there was good people there. There was like 4,000 people standing there protesting like a normal protest. We're not talking about them.
yeah, and there
We're
was a bunch
talking
of
about
those.
the
There was a bunch of
outrage.
them that were there. They were protesting, and when people started going into the Capitol, they went,
Right.
no,
Right.
this wasn't what I was here for."
We're not talking about them. That's
No,
what
those are
Rhonda McDaniels said
Ronna
afterwards
McDaniels, yeah, something like that.
to clear up her statement. She said, "No, I was talking about the good people. There wasn't great people. There was decent people that knew enough to walk away. But
Right.
the outer ring of the conspiracy, when people are talking about the big lie, is the insurrectionists among themselves. And the point I wanted to make real quick was everybody thinks Donald Trump is the tip of the spear. Donald Trump isn't the tip of the spear. He's the shield other people are using to get past you so that they can stab you. You know what I mean?
Right.
He isn't the spear. He's what the spear hides behind. People think he isn't. And that's what I wanted to say. And that, these people, the insurrectionists used him as an excuse to do what they had already wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and the seditionists use the insurrectionists as the vehicle to try and do what they wanted to do. And
Right.
so and the peaceful protesters that were actually there peacefully protesting, uh unfortunately get the part of being there for this thing that they had no intention of being a part of in
Right.
that regard. And well, I guess this is one of those things where that I was always taught guilty by association, and it's like,
Sure.
if
Sure.
that's if
Sure.
if that's who you're going to associate with, you shouldn't be surprised when they come looking at you saying, well, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
that's a
agreed.
problem.
It's
And
just we're using the number of people that were there in general, say 5,000, as a number of radical people in this country, but it wasn't even 5,000 radical people at there. When we're not, I want to eliminate them and strip them out. Like, yes, guilty by association. You should get charged with a misdemeanor for being a part of something that went
well,
wrong.
and that's
You know what I mean? But
and I don't even agree with that. The thing is that, if you were there protesting, you were there protesting, but the moment that you moved in on it,
yes, if you went
that's
beyond the barricade, you are
and the,
charged. You know what
and
I
those are
mean?
and those people are getting charged. And so far
Yes.
there's been like 600 and some that
But
have
some
been
of those are
charged.
misdemeanors for trespassing, which is what they should have been getting. You know what I mean?
Well,
But
and
it's
that's what I would argue that the insurrectionists are getting. They're getting a bunch of
mhm,
misdemeanor charges. Some of them are getting felony charges. And from there, inside of that group, that's where you have the seditionists who are
right.
going to find themselves in a very interesting world of hurt for the foreseeable future.
Was one guy, I don't know who it was, just testified for 9 hours to the 1-6 committee.
There's a bunch of people that have
Yeah,
testified there, and
450 people. So
yeah,
yeah.
so it's interesting, and I think that it's something that's gonna.
Do you think the 1-6 committee is a justifiable committee?
Yes, I do. I mean,
Okay. I'm
I think
asking you
it's
very basic and simple questions because we skirt around this stuff, and people are questioning this stuff. I too think it's a
it's a
legitimate committee.
it's
I
a
think they
legitimate
should do
committee,
this.
and
This
I think one of the things that we have to ask the question of is, what powers does Congress have? I think there's a legitimate question to be asked because you have this body that's, subpoenaing, offering subpoenas and having people held in contempt for not,
right,
testifying and things like that. And I think that that's a fundamental question that needs to be asked and answered of the courts. I do think that they need to get that answer from the Supreme Court. Is it legitimate for them to do that?
right,
And especially right now when you have a conservative Supreme Court, I think this is a fantastic question for them to be able to answer because we know that a liberal court would say yes right now. The
right.
question is would a conservative court say yes right now?
Would
And
that,
if a con-
would one branch neuter another branch?
and
Wow.
if a conservative Supreme Court said yes, these are legitimate, these are legitimate powers of Congress,
Right.
then what's the Republican Party going to do? Tell their conservative Supreme Court they're not conservative?
Well, I think they said that when they said that Trump's papers from the archives could go to Congress. I think they pretty much legitimized the committee right then,
I do
you
think.
know?
Well, and here's the thing: is I think that there's a difference between records that are already kept as a part of government versus interviewing people and
Sure.
getting messages from that realm. I think that's a very fine distinction that I do believe needs clarification. I think that it is a legitimate function because we use that function in a number of other places already.
Right, right.
Um, but but we've never really had a definitive answer on that one.
But
And I think
a
that
man that's reading a piece of paper generated by our government as he works for the government, created by somebody that works for the government, that's government property. That's easy. That's ours. That's public,
I don't disagree.
It just is. Sorry, I'm surprised we don't save the presidential toilet paper because we pay for it. You know what I mean?
Oh God, that's a horrible thought.
It is a real horrible thought, but I'm surprised that somewhere we don't have like LBJ's fucking wet ass tissues, you know what I mean?
Oh God.
But that's ours. That's ours. And I don't think Trump ever understood that public office meant public disclosure. And he's been fighting
Oh
that
yeah.
ever since.
Well, and that's one of those biggest ones that's been a fight since Nixon is the idea of executive privilege. And I'm sorry, I don't believe in executive privilege in an
Right.
office that is voted on by the public. I do believe in top secret clearance and
Sure.
and
Hell
and
yeah.
and secret information, confidential information that doesn't necessarily belong in the public eye. Have some I have some issues with it though, just because there is the whole if we have enemies that are looking to harm us, we don't want to give too much away. But at the
Right.
same time, too, that information belongs to me. I pay for it with my taxes and voted on it, with these people.
Right.
There's a certain amount of information I do believe that
And
I should be entitled to.
we need some regulation on the surveillance process itself
Oh
to
Jesus
ensure our
Christ!
safety while ensuring our safety. And but we can't ever work on that if we're broadening just talking about Donald Trump. If we're only
No,
talking about, oh, is it we can't fix that. Like he was trying to go into the intelligence like threads to hear unfiltered stuff, which by the way is our cell phones. You know what I mean? Donald Trump wanted to listen to NSA recordings of Americans' phone calls to find proof of foreign interference in the election that never happened. That was one of the inner circle plans.
yep. And then there was the revelation that there was a plan for the National Guard to seize voting machines.
Right. And there's proof of this from Donald Trump, not from us, but from the
Right.
Donald Trump administration. That's not something Democrats just whipped up. That's something they got from the archive.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Was there voter fraud? Does Donald Trump have any bearing at all when he
that
says that the election was stolen?
no. Was there voter fraud? Yes. How do we know
400,
this?
400 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, there on average there's 400 to 800 cases of voter fraud every year, every
Right.
election,
Right.
in every major election. So the reality is that of course there was some voter fraud. Was
70%
there?
voted Republican, by the way, of the 400 cases.
Yeah. So Was there enough voter fraud to tip the balance of an election? Oh, hell no. And that's been
Okay.
proven time and time again.
Right.
And that's the difference is that there's always going to be voter fraud, and I expect the system to catch those instances
It does.
and prosecute those instances.
It
That
does.
doesn't surprise me. But what is absolute bullshit is when you have a group of people saying that somehow, they miraculously have found, all of this proof of voter fraud, but then that proof doesn't exist or can't be found or can't be interpreted or can't be, and somehow, magically it's, all of these things that it's none of those things, and it doesn't make any
Right.
fucking sense. Like,
Right.
I mean, the real fraud that people aren't talking about is the fact that, you had a bunch of people try to certify themselves as states electors that weren't
Right.
voted on. And I'm going to call that's voter fraud.
Arizona said 3 sets of electors. That was a great point you just made.
That's
Like,
voter fraud.
Democrats were made up 30% of the voter fraud cases that didn't include the false electors that attempted to steal an entire state's worth of ballots,
That's voter fraud.
And so it amazes me when you look back at Donald Trump. He says there's widespread voter fraud. There is. How does he know? It's him.
Right. It's
Right?
his, it's the people who are too busy, trying
Yeah.
to suck that and,
When
and
when
say that
he's
it's theirs.
when he said there's a deep state, you know how he knew? It was him. It's like he's being more honest, I think, than people are aware of.
Well, yeah, I believe this is the definition of honest to a fault.
Yes, but I just don't think we don't believe him that he's saying it. He thinks, I don't know. I don't know. Donald Trump is
It's
pretty good at what he does, and that's not being a politician. That's taking advantage of stupid people. He's
right.
really good at what he does, and yes, he tells you as much as the truth as he possibly. He just admitted that he wanted Mike Pence to overturn the erection.
Over, yes, yes. Let's overturn the erection.
Oh my God. And Mike Pence, of course, I've heard 3 times a day. Oh, she
Oh,
just now Debbie had the image of Mike Pence and Donald Trump. What?
I.
Oh, that's everything.
Uh,
Let's take a minute. Let's just take a minute with that. And Mike Pence now says that he didn't have the authority to overturn an election, which
he's always said that.
obviously,
He's
but
always
then,
said that.
but guess Joe Manchin today, by the way, Joe Manchin, by the way, just said today, Build Back Better is dead. Like if you're thinking about that bill, it's already dead. But he also said we're going to fix the Electoral Count Act because people protested because they saw ambiguity in the Electoral Count Act. And I had to tweet Joe Manchin and say they didn't protest because they saw ambiguity in the Electoral Count Act. They were told to protest because Donald Trump was told there was ambiguity in the Electoral Count Act. And no matter how much you try and reform it, he's going to see that ambiguity again. Like you're
Right.
not going to be able to codify this law in a way that Donald Trump won't just kick to the side like a fucking rubber ball. So
Oh man.
I don't know. Let's see. Oh man, the Olympics, Jeffrey. One of my favorite tweets this week. I got hundreds of likes and retweets because I was like, I can't support the Olympics in any way, and I'm shocked of any network that could boycott Beijing 2022. Everybody loved it. Everybody loved it. It's like weird. The Olympics, I can't support it, and the top celebrities are Vladimir Putin and whatever she is called. It's just weird.
Xi Jinping.
I'm going to leave you with that and I'm going to go to the bathroom.
I mean, I just don't really watch the Olympics as it is a whole lot. I think as a kid, like it was really fantastic and really interesting. And, I had all these, I got to grow up with the Dream Team and Carrie Strug and, you know, Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding and, um, oh God, what was his name? The wrestler from Wyoming that, won the wrestling gold. God, I can't think of his name. Uh, I'll figure it out later. But at some point, that changes, and I watched as, it became more of a political dick swinging contest rather than, a celebration of athletes. And, maybe it was always that, I'm sure it was, going back into the times where, it was the American athletes against the Soviets and all that other fun stuff. But, this, rather than be a celebration of the best of the best athletes, it's now just like this measure, this ideal measure of how strong a country is. And I think that's kind of crap. But then, you've got all of these other issues going on: Russia instigating shit with Ukraine, China and its
Yeah.
treatment of the weaker Muslim population. I mean,
Right.
let's not forget our own fucking shit at home that we're not dealing with.
I don't
And
like
it's
that.
like, it's like, great, so we're awesome, but here's all these horrible fucking things that we're doing, but we're trying to make this thing that's about athletics be political. And it's like, fuck it, I can't deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this.
I got you. Hey, if China wants to boycott us because of the kids at the in cages on our border, they are more than welcome to do it.
I don't disagree with that one.
But the people, like, I don't support either one. You know what I mean? I don't like
Mm,
either one.
it's like, if this were just about the athletes, and not this
That would
weird
be
political
cool.
dick measuring contest, that would be fine, because I love athletics. I love a good athletics competition. I
Yeah, me
love
too.
I
Me
love to
too.
see people, the best of the best, go head to head against each other. I think that's fantastic.
Me too.
So,
I just don't think it should be in any one specific place. Like China, I don't like that. I just don't like China. We fund China's expansionism, and they in turn use that to oppress people. So I don't like that. Like when I buy an Apple phone, I have an Apple phone. Yeah, of course, part of that money went to China in their expansion. Even in COVID, their economy didn't take a hit because of how much we fund them. It's just crazy to me. And I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm anti-China. I was hearing something. So here's a thought. Their zero COVID policy has weakened the population and made them less likely to be able to resist Omicron, which is 3 times as infectious, meaning that they won't be able to keep their zero COVID policy. What do you think?
I mean, the vaccines that they have access to aren't as effective as they
Right.
would like them to be. And then, you have a population that hasn't gotten infected, and now suddenly you have a virus that's even more infectious. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to be as effective as they would like. And at some point, you're literally just going to, completely tamp down your ability to produce anything. So I mean, hey,
Right.
more power to them, I guess.
Well, George Soros, I heard, because I'm part of the liberal meetings, you know what I mean? The secret meetings. And George Soros was saying that they're going to keep zero COVID into effect until the end of the year, because at the end of the year is when Xi's term is up, and that there's already a growing um, discontentment with him within the government. And if there's a large COVID outbreak, it'll give the government cause to, end his term.
uh,
I don't know. I don't know. I just think I love pondering about China. You know what I mean? Like, do you think she's gonna just be kicked out of office? I don't think so. In China, I just don't think so. But it's a fun thing.
not when his policies have been as effective as they are and everything else.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So here's an interesting perspective I heard during a conversation, was that Russia is cozying up to China, right?
Hmm.
And so if we stop natural gas going to Germany, it'll just go to China and it will strengthen their alliance. But what I'm realizing that if they become besties within 10 years, China's going to start realizing that the land Russia took from them is actually theirs, and it's also the land that creates the natural gas that they're paying for. And so I'm starting to see a possibility to where Russia and China could be starting to fight over Russian land. There's more Chinese than Russians. China has way more wealth than Russia. They could very easily just populate a region that's barely populated in Russia. There could be a major problem growing in communism, buddy. China could just crush Russia.
Well, yeah, it ain't like the glory days when, of the Soviet Union, when the Soviets could crush China.
Right? It's
Well,
Russia's just not as big as we think they are. They act really big, but they're not really big.
well, they don't have the same military expenditures that they used to. They don't have the same
Right.
standing army that they used to. They don't have the same broad population that they used to.
Yeah.
They don't have the same I would say manufacturing force that they used to. They just don't have the things that they used to have.
No
And
creativity, no innovation. You know what I
it's
mean?
that's a problem for them, and that's their own problem, and more power
Yeah.
to them if that's the I love that. What's that? I love this journey for you is what they like to say now. Love that journey for you.
I don't know. I like taking the opportunity to fucking crush China or Russia. Go America. Democracy rocks. Let's see what else do I got here. Mandates. Yeah, the Olympics. Let's see what else. Oh, legitimate. So Jeff Bezos bought a bridge and started excavating an inlet so his mega yacht could get in somewhere. And people were complaining about Jeff Bezos doing this, and it made me realize that we fund that. Like 250 million Americans alone pay $99 a month for their Amazon Prime, and then they get mad at him when he has a rocket ship. Like I'm confused about people and what they understand about how their money is spent and where it goes. And do you think that maybe instead of buying a mega yacht or a bridge or an inlet, he could have lowered the cost of Amazon Prime to maybe $59 a year?
Oh, I think honestly, like when you talk about Bezos, there's
I'm just in search of I'm in
so much
search
you
of a
could
way
go
to
into.
communicate this part of the conversation to people, that if your vote doesn't work, maybe your money will, you know?
And that's the real answer is like, if you're tired of seeing Bezos do the shit that he's doing, stop buying stuff at Amazon.
Stop buying
Real
Amazon
answer. That's
Prime,
that's
right?
stop buying Prime, stop buying stuff at Amazon, stop, but here's the thing is that Amazon is more than just buying stuff now.
Yeah.
Amazon has server space that you wouldn't believe of, and a lot of companies use Amazon
Uh-huh.
Web Services in order to, make things run. People don't realize like how many services on the back end use Amazon Web Services or AWS.
That's a great
AWS
point.
has a huge, huge cloud processing ability, and people are not paying attention to the fact that, yeah, the products that they sell
Right.
definitely fund a lot of things, but they're doing big business with big business.
Mhm.
So, I mean,
You
you
can't
can,
kill them.
you might weaken them, but that's like, when everybody does these, don't buy from Amazon for this day, and that'll show them who's boss. And then, what do? You go buy shit the next day. It's like,
Right.
what? It's like, look, either you support the position or you don't. This idea of these weird 1 day or 1 week strikes that, are suddenly going to like completely change hearts and minds, like it's
Right.
fucking virtue signaling is all it is. It's like if you can't support the platform, don't support the platform. Period. End of story. Don't give
Mhm.
yourself an end date to when you will support the platform again. It's like
Right.
you're not hurting anybody but yourself during that time if you are hurting yourself, or use it as your time to be like, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to start buying more local stuff. And if I can't find it, then I suppose I'll have to go to Amazon.
Or just be like, I guess I don't really give a fuck if he has a giant yacht. I got what I want too. Like, it's okay. That's capitalism. He's allowed to make his money, but don't complain about him too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you're going to complain about it, then fucking stop supporting it. I mean, that's just
Right.
the end of it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And that's great. If you decide that you can't support the lifestyle and the things that he's doing, great. Don't order from Amazon anymore. Perfect.
There's
You know,
the same thing is going on with Fox. People are upset that Neil Young got Joe Rogan, you know, whatever kicked off or whatever happened on Spotify, that whole thing. And people are like, why not do it to Fox News? And I was telling somebody, Fox News literally makes no money. Their ads are My Pillow and Copper Fit. It's not like they're rolling in dough, but Fox Movie Entertainment, Fox subsidiaries, Fox Sports, that's what keeps the lights on. And nobody is willing to boycott like 130 affiliates, 5 different movie studios,
right,
and 10 different sports franchise. They literally do the announcing for the Yankees inside sports cast. You know
right.
what I mean? And So I mean, they're not making money off Fox News. You can boycott that all day long. If you boycott Tucker, you're only hurting Copperfit, maybe, Tommy John's. There's not a lot you're doing, and nobody's willing to not watch. I don't know what Fox movies make, honestly. I don't know. 20th Century Fox is everywhere. And so people have to understand. And what Fox really makes money off of is, even if you boycott every Fox thing, if you have Hulu or Spectrum or Comcast, and Comcast carries Fox gets a percentage from being in the bundle that they're offering. So you're still not going to get rid of the way they get their income. These boycotts, they're not going to work the way you think they're going to work, because companies are diversified that way.
Now, what has worked? This
Well, what
is
does work? How does it work? Tell
Well,
me.
here's what has worked. I mean, you look at what people have done. People have pulled their music from Spotify. People have pulled their support from Spotify.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not so sure how accurate this is, but there was something like 20% of people polled about their Spotify said that they were going to pull their, that they were either canceled or were canceling their Spotify subscription.
Hmm.
And if you look at that, guess what suddenly started happening? They started putting warnings on Rogan's podcast. They started pulling old episodes where he's using racial slurs.
75 of them so far.
100. It's gone up.
Wow.
So guess what? Money talks, and you actually have to commit to that conviction.
Yes.
You actually have to commit to it, and it's great when you do. If something is that wrong, absolutely commit to that conviction and don't support it. Great,
Right.
fantastic. And now Spotify is being forced to have to address that. That's just one of those things that people don't understand, is that these weird little temporary things don't work,
Right.
because all you do is just back end look. It's kind of like, the way that I look at it, it's kind of like going to the grocery store on an empty stomach,
Uh-huh.
because you invariably end up coming back with a bunch of crap. You're like, why the fuck did I buy this?
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Me too. But it's like
And
buying Northern. It's saying, I'm not going to buy Northern because it's made by the Koch brothers. So I'm going to buy Angel Soft, which is also made by the Koch brothers. You know what I mean?
so, people who go, oh, well, I'm going to boycott Amazon for the week.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is did you actually continue your normal spending trend when you boycotted Amazon for a week, or did you reward yourself for your boycott by buying a bunch of more stuff on Amazon
Yeah.
than you would have bought during the week?
Yep. See, I don't use Amazon Prime. I still use Amazon, and I use the free shipping. You know what I mean? I wait until I need enough, but I don't need to shop that way. Like, consumerism is something that I'm trying to eliminate in my life. I don't really need anything. I have everything I want, and anything I get will just be a bonus to that. So I don't really need it. So I use Amazon, but I don't pay them $99 a year for the luxury of clicking on their site. You know what I mean? I don't know what benefits Amazon Prime has
Faster
that I
delivery,
can't.
there's a few things that you get access to as part of the subscription.
Okay.
There are some benefits to it, especially where I would say that uh, living closer to distribution sites, there might not necessarily be the same
Mm,
benefit. But like, for example, you get Prime Video, so you got the ability to look at to watch different shows and things like that, and all that
good
fun
good
stuff.
shows.
Some of
Like,
them are.
okay, I don't know.
Yeah, there are some good shows on there. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, there's definitely been a benefit to it, but at the same time, I need to reevaluate my subscription to it and see if it's even necessary,
Just
because I
curious.
mean that price is actually going up.
Okay, that's sad. See, it should be going down. The guy's got money for rocket ships. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I mean, look at Netflix, for example. That, did you start with Netflix back in the day when it was just
Mhm.
DVDs? And how
Yeah,
much it
yeah, yeah.
cost you?
I don't know, 7.99,
Yep,
5.99, 3 month,
7.99.
30 day free trial, all that stuff.
7.99, and it was great because you got like 2 or 3 DVDs at a time. It was fantastic, and you just, as soon as you'd finish one, you'd send it back in and get the next one on your list.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It was great. And now it's like, for that same level of access, it's like shit. 17, $15 now, $16. I think it's set to go up again. And it's like,
For
why?
what? I'm just gonna scroll through their content, not finding anything I want to, you know what I mean? And
But
I've done that, you know.
they've
My
got some good
problem is,
shows. They've got
well,
some good shows that they're making themselves. And I think that's, at least for me, like as somebody who doesn't watch network television,
mm-hmm,
I think the benefit of Netflix for me has been that, you know, I'm getting to see more shows that I always hoped that I would be able to watch, because everything that comes out on network television is like that weird, super sanitized. Here's a laugh track.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Bad joke, awkward situation,
Mm-hmm.
lovey-dovey, kind of a fight. Yeah, oh
Everything's
God,
wrapped up in a half hour, major problem, sexual abuse, but hey, everybody's happy at the end of the half
boring.
hour. Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you've got some stuff that's, that they're exploring with TV that you couldn't explore with on network TV. So that, to
Right.
me, that's been great. Like they've got a bunch of great shows out there, and some they've pulled some they've pulled, and I've been pissed about that, and some they've still got going, and some I'm not sure why they have it still going, and you
Okay.
know I think it allowed for a new edge for TV that you just didn't necessarily get.
It's just surrounded by garbage. And I think that's my issue is like there's shows on Paramount Plus I want to watch, but just a show. I don't want to subscribe. There's a show on HBO I like, but I don't want to subscribe. There might be movies on Disney I want to watch, but once I'm done, do I really need the subscription? It's so I don't get this. It's like they're spreading the streaming. And I'll hear about like Big Mouth or something on Netflix, and I'm like, oh, I want to watch, or Ozark, a new season
Mhm.
of Ozark's out on Netflix. And it's like, I can't watch that unless I have Netflix. I can't afford all those subscriptions. And when I do, I'm not going to be able to find anything that I want to watch because I don't know what's good. It's just a bunch of pictures on a screen to me, you know?
Yeah, and so and that's just it. Is that if you don't want to watch it or you can't watch it, then hey, great. you know and for me, it's
Uh,
like, well, there's been some great stuff that we've been able to watch. For me, I think
yeah.
one of my favorite shows to come out of the Netflix self-produced shows there has been Stranger Things. I think it's fantastic, and I'm
Ooh,
bummed that I haven't gotten a new season yet.
I
It's
watched
been a
season
while.
one. Yeah, I watched season one.
2 and 3 are also great.
I'm sure they are, but I was waiting for somebody. I watched the first season with somebody and I was like, well, I won't watch the second season until I can watch it with you. And that never happened. So
Well,
yeah, I remember Stranger Things. There's a show called Luther, and it's like one of those independent shows, and I really liked it. So I like
hmm
that content. Amazon Prime had something called Venezuela that I really wanted to see.
hmm
Um, there's the what 1886, that new show. I want to see that with Sam Elliott. There's a lot
that's
of
on
great.
that's on Amazon, or not Amazon. That's on Paramount Plus, I think is what
Right,
that
right. So
is.
there's a ton of shows that I want to see. It's just I end up on Hulu with bad fucking volume levels. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So what I did start doing, I'm embarrassed about. I think that superhero movies are the pinnacle of our age. Like Star Trek and Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica used to be, where it
hmm
forged our future. I think superhero movies are forging our future. I think we're going more into super soldiers and advanced technologies for humans because of that. And so I decided to watch the Marvel movies in chronological order, starting with Captain America and Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel was the second one, and I still can't figure out why. I'm trying to figure it out. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And I want to say Captain Marvel or not Captain Marvel, Captain America. Great audio levels. You know, I don't think people understand audio levels in movies, like the quietness of the fucking Walking Dead combined with the loudness of Die Hard. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's a hard thing to do, and a lot of movies don't do that anymore. So I really appreciate movies that don't go to a level 12 and then down to a level 3. So I have to adjust it. you know.
Hmm.
But I like superhero movies to me, and that's like the super commercialized, gross part of movies. And if Fox makes them, I'll feel really bad.
Well, the Marvel movies are Disney, so
Oh, okay. Well, I don't like Disney very much either. They don't pay their workers. They don't pay their fucking theme park workers enough. Their workers are actually homeless and on Medicaid because Disney doesn't pay their park employees enough. So maybe I should not support that either. But what do you end up supporting, Jeffrey? I mean, Coca-Cola's in a battle right now about something. I thought they were a good company working on plastics that dissolve and stuff, and now they're over here being racist or something. I don't know the story. I just
oh,
heard it.
every company, like that's the thing about all of these mega corporations. I guarantee you're going to find if you take more than about 5 minutes to look at these mega companies, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
find something that you hate. Nestle steals water from a bunch of different places. Pepsi
Tallahassee. Sorry, you're right.
Pepsi
You're right.
Pepsi has some major controversy going on right now where they're supporting somebody or they're what was it? Oh, Pepsi has been donating to Republican candidates,
Mm,
like in Texas and yeah, in Texas. I'm Coca-Cola. Yeah, sure, they had their hey, black voices and votes matter, and they're doing some sort of shady shit right
like
now
Pizza,
too. It's like
Pizza, Pizza Hut
Pizza
is
Hut.
Pepsi. Pizza Hut is Pepsi, right? Like Pepsi made Pizza Hut?
No, I don't think so.
Huh.
I think they might own Pizza Hut now.
They made Taco Bell. Like they wanted to sell their drinks, so they made a Taco Bell around their fountain drinks.
Maybe
That's
I
how
don't.
so I just that's interesting because I boycott Pizza Hut. I can boycott Pepsi. I don't drink soda anyway.
the I mean, the reality is that you look at all these mega corporations, and I guarantee you're going to find something that you hate.
Heck yeah.
and and you look at mom and pop corporations, I guarantee you'll find something that you hate. I mean, realistically, a lot of small business owners tend to lean conservative, and so if they're lean conservative and they make enough money, are they donating to political candidates? And if they're donating to political candidates, what political candidates are they donating to, and who are what are those political candidates? It's like at some point, like
Right.
you just have to realize that every single organization that you support is probably doing something that you hate. The question is like, what is your cutoff? Like, at what
Right.
point are you like, I can't support this organization, this company, because of what they're doing in X, Y, and Z? And some people, it's like, great, we're not going to support that company until they change their practices regarding X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And if they do, then great, you go back to supporting them. If they don't, great, you don't support them. If they do fix it and you decide not to support them any further, great, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee you that, the organizations that you think you love the most, guaranteed that they're doing something super shitty, super shady, and you just don't know about it yet.
Right. But as you're complaining about one thing, just remember you're supporting another thing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're
Yeah.
not
It's
you're not
like it's like
perfect.
it's like, sitting down and saying, well, I can't support Amazon for what they're doing, so I'm gonna go shop at Walmart.
Right. That's my point. I can, yeah,
Okay. Oh, sure. I guess, if that's your answer, then all right. Two
exactly.
companies that buy shitty crap from China that treat their employees like garbage. And the owners of those companies do shitty things, support shitty people and shitty politics. Cool. Okay. Whatever works for you. I guess whatever helps you sleep at night.
I shared our shortened supply chain theory with Pete Buttigieg because he had a tweet about we should invest in America and shorten our supply chains. And I was like, I love what you're saying, but could we switch that definition of America to Americas? You know how many solutions we could create if we just, supported our neighbors. And then I realized it was Pete, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, Pete. I didn't realize it was you I was responding to. You don't ever respond back. You're kind of a dick, so fuck off." Like I don't like Pete Buttigieg very much. He called transportation a racial issue, which pretty much sounds racist and ableist at the same time. So I don't know. if he came on the show, I would be happy to talk to him and try and change his opinions about things, but he seems pretty intelligent and set in his ways. So
Mhm.
whatever. So how about this thing we didn't even get to talk about because we didn't get the guy on to confirm any more of it. But so these people in California decided to give homeless people $500 a month for 6 months,
Mhm.
and two-thirds of the people actually found permanent housing. Who would have thought that if you give homeless people money, they won't spend it on drugs, Joe Manchin, but they will look for services that they can access. And that's what part of the story was, is these people know where the resources are, they just can't get to them. And if you gave them the bridge of cash to get to the services they need to get housing and food and all this stuff, that they could actually do it.
I didn't get a chance to see it. Was it permanent housing with that permanent $500 a month support, or was it for that
No, it
six
was
month period and then they got permanent housing and they're supporting themselves
they're
now?
supporting themselves now. It was
Okay.
six months, but they went on to find housing, a job, and they could get food and then prepare themselves for the next, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It
Okay.
was nice. So that was thousands of people, which I thought, well, if he only did it for three people, two-thirds isn't a real big deal, but it was thousands of people.
Hmm.
That changes perceptions. I was watching a morning show and they were talking about how to address gun violence in New York, the mayor needed to address the homelessness problem because homelessness bleeds into criminal activity. That really offended me. And the other thing they said was we also need to beef up mental illness responses because that's an issue of homeless people. And I thought to myself, generally, you are so stereotypical in your descriptions of homeless people. It made me sick. You know,
Right.
like
So so
some of them are right, but
I'm gonna pick this fight, but not for the reason that people are thinking I'm gonna pick this fight.
ooh,
So you said
like
homelessness feeds into criminality.
right. Well, it feeds into the causes
Of
criminality.
criminality. Okay. And I would say that that's absolutely true. But why is
In a
that true?
way, but is it
But
violent?
why is that true?
Well, they have no other way to live. They have to. By nature,
There you
homelessness
go.
is breaking a loitering law. You know what I mean?
So what you're doing, yeah, oh well, people that are homeless are, there's been a rise in criminality because of the homeless population. Okay, so what have you criminalized? Or what are you
Yeah,
doing that is now feeding into that quote unquote rise in crime? Are we
right.
like, what statistics are we talking about? Are we talking about thefts? Are we talking about drug use? Are we talking about loitering? Are we talking about, public indecencies? Are we talking, what are we talking about here? And all I can say
Yeah.
is that when you refuse to provide services that would prevent those things, why are you fucking shocked that those very things are happening?
And why is that in a discussion about police shootings? Like police were murdered in New York, and suddenly it's you're bringing the homeless into it. Like you didn't need to do that. Yes, there needs to be resources for the homeless. We talk about that all the time. You need to go to them and see what they need, get it for them. You know what I mean? It's just you can't blame them for everything and be the reason that they exist. You know?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Is that you can sit down and you can say all that you want that homelessness causes a rise in criminality, but
Mhm.
when you refuse to provide services that prevent those criminal actions,
Yeah.
why are you fucking shocked? Why are you surprised that that's happened? That's no different than well, we've been busting all these people for it's like when news organizations were reporting, it's like now that weed has been legalized, crime has dropped. um why do you think that is? It's because it's not illegal anymore.
Right. People aren't getting pulled over in Chicago for a joint in their hand anymore, you know?
Yeah, if something's not illegal, you're going to see a reduction in crime in that thing, of course.
Yeah. But what about all the people that are in jail because it was at one time legal? Now they're felons. They're in jail for something that's not even illegal anymore.
They need to be released and expunged.
Yeah, totally.
And unless and it's like unless they were dealing other things. It's like
Billy.
unless Billy, Billy, why? What, you don't like that? You don't like that point? You don't like that point, Billy?
Well, home. Billy's not
Um,
homeless. That's all that matters. But I just don't like, I think that using that terminology is, it allows people to be dismissive of the problem. By saying that homeless people are mentally challenged criminals, you're like, I don't even have to care about them because they're just so vulgar to society. When that's not them. That's 1 to 5% of them, maybe 10%, 20, 30. But you can't say it's all of them. And we should try and help the people in most
and
need as well as
and
the people that are easy to fix, you know?
and also too, if you provided housing, if you provided services that they could access, if you provided basic
Straight
needs,
cash, just straight cash, apparently.
and apparently in this experiment, just straight cash. Apparently, what happens is that all of those criminal things drops significantly.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because they're not doing shit out in public in order to survive, that you've somehow managed to criminalize it. I don't understand how people get fucking shocked and surprised by this stuff. Yet when you propose the idea of, instead of paying for them to be harassed by the cops and to be thrown in jail and go through court systems time and time again, and pay
Yeah.
for cops to keep rousing them time and time again, all of those expenses add up to far more than if you just fucking paid for housing and services. Like,
Right.
if
Or
places like Utah and New Mexico can figure this out,
yeah.
then I don't know what to fucking tell you. It's like, sure, Utah and New Mexico have had a couple of different approaches to it, but overwhelmingly it has worked. So I don't even know what to say. It's like, these things do work, they do exist, and you either have to decide to do something about it, or not be surprised that this shit keeps happening.
Yeah. I just wonder what the I wonder what the rules were to get into this program and then how they were monitored during the program. Those are the two things I'm kind of curious about. Was it regulated to where they only had one path, or did you just give them money and say, go do your thing? And they made the good decisions, or were they guided to the good decisions through the process? That's something I really wanted to know.
That would be a great topic of discussion. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of ways to help,
Yeah.
and the government keeps complaining that they've tried nothing and they're all out of options.
That's one of my favorite lines from The Simpsons.
Yep.
So how about this one? This one's cool. We got, wait a minute, wait a minute. Yeah, we got like 10 minutes left. So San Jose wants to start a policy where you need liability insurance and you need a $25, um, what is that? 25, you need to pay $25 per gun per year to have the gun and liability insurance for having the gun. And people are saying that's not fair. That's a tax.
um it is
I
a
think it
tax.
I think it's friggin' awesome, by the way. I think that's perfectly legitimate. We need liability insurance in Florida to have a gun.
um as far as the per gun tax, I disagree with that one.
Oh, the $25. Yeah, 2/3 of the board kind of did, but they all but one supported the
I
insurance
do.
requirement.
I and here's the thing, is like, there's a few organizations out there that are now selling and providing insurance for gun
Mhm.
owners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
USCCA is one of the organizations, and they have basic plans to elite plans and things like that. And it comes with a variety of different perks, like places where you can get training on how to handle your gun, places
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you can get training regarding the laws, or regarding local laws on how you're supposed to handle, store, when you can use your gun. I think in terms of gun ownership, I think it's something that even I've been looking into, to be perfectly honest, because those are important things. Like, what happens after, let's say, there's a shooting that occurs. You know, do you have the money for a lawyer? If you're paying into this insurance, you'd have a significant amount of access to capital
Yep.
regarding that. And why is that? Well, much like auto insurance, most gun owners don't ever have anything happen that requires any use of their firearms beyond target or hunting. So you have this great pool of money that can be used in the event of, say, somebody needs a lawyer for something. Now,
Right.
what that also means is that, for USCCA is that they offer significant levels of training to help you offset your deficiencies and their costs. So that way it's like, look,
Yeah.
if you do something stupid, you find yourself, going to jail, they're not going to be paying, they're going to provide you lawyers that are going to sit down and say, yeah, look, you did some real dumb shit. You didn't follow the training that was provided. You think about the laws of your state, and that you're going to
Mhm.
go to jail. So my job is now just to try and, get you the best deal that I can,
Right.
versus, somebody who might have had, a self-defense incident, and, you're going to look at going to trial, and that shit's expensive.
So the $25 is to create a pool for those gun incidences of suicide and misfires. And that's what they want to do that for. They're putting it in a pool because some gun owners they're not safe enough with their weapons and things happen with them. You know what I mean? We know suicide exists and there's a
Mm-hmm.
cost to all that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that's because of guns, and insurance isn't going to pay for that.
Well, and I would also argue there too that, what the government says they're going to do with certain money versus what they end up actually doing with that money are two very different things. And
What?
so let's be real honest. I don't believe that that's exactly what that's going to get used for. Period. In the
Okay.
story. I think that, it's either going to get used for some type of, I mean, unless you have it so that way that law cannot be changed unless, it's done by the voters. The reality is that I guarantee you that they're going to take the funds from that particular registration fee, and it's going to get used in any number of things, because how many, realistically, how many accidents and suicides are there that are going to require any type of funding? And then number two,
Six hundred a year.
why is it incumbent upon the rest of the gun owning population to pay for somebody else's fuck up?
Regulate yourself or get regulated.
And so basically it's like, if there's a gun owner out there that shoots himself in the leg, hi Shane, uh, why should I have to pay because he was negligent and shot himself in the leg?
Wait,
Shane would argue that I have no, reason to pay for him shooting himself in the leg.
why do I pay property taxes that go to fund your kid's education?
The difference is that, my kids being educated have a very different reduction in crime versus somebody shooting themselves in the leg.
Hmm. Okay. I got no argument for that.
That's the
I can
difference.
I can tell you
That's
have one in your head and you're like, he's not
Oh yeah.
going there. I'm just not going there.
It's well, and you think about it when
I
you look
believe in
at
free education. I don't want to have the debate based on education and gun
right. Well,
rights.
and
Like,
that's the thing is that, there is a, when you look at tangible benefits, we know that there are tangible benefits to society when there
mhm,
is education, and we know that that benefit extends well beyond just high school. We know that that benefit extends into, trade programs and colleges as well. We know that
sure.
that's settled.
Yeah.
But when you look at,
Even if I pay my taxes for a road to get paved in the South, it still benefits me
you would
overall.
have a better argument if you said that that registration fee was going to be used in terms of the reimbursement to families that have lost people to gun violence. You would have a better
Mm.
argument in that realm. You would have a much better argument in that realm. That's still a tough one.
Yeah, I can't say
But if
that's
it,
what it's for.
but when it comes to, suicides and, people, misfiring and hurting themselves, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think that that's number one. That'll never work out. Number two, I think that the reality is that it would look more like what I just said, is that that
Right.
money would actually get used to reimburse the victims of shootings.
And then what the fuck did you expect conservatives? You took women's right to fucking privacy and healthcare away. You knew liberals are going to react. Oh, now you're getting an insurance thing. Deal with it, you know? Like they're coming after your guns in the next 10 years legitimately now because they have a reason. You came after abortion. They said we won't come after
You
guns if
created
you don't. Yeah,
you created a pathway. What did you expect was going to happen?
that's
So you
right.
either have to hope that the court removes that pathway, or,
Mhm.
you're going to watch a bunch of
Oh,
Uh,
you're gonna see Beto O'Rourke in 2023, fucking just as governor. You're gonna see what it looks like when an honest politician fucking comes for your guns. Honest to God.
oh, and that's the thing is like I really do think that, um, if someone dies from a shooting, that you're going to see laws that allow people to go after the manufacturer or the company that sold the gun.
Biden brought
That
that up.
and I think I think that's if you're going to go after abortion in that way, don't be surprised when people go after gun violence that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You sat there and screamed that banning things doesn't work.
As you were
Well,
banning things and
as you
burning
were
things.
banning things. And so guess what? Now you're going to find out how far that rabbit hole actually goes. Nobody's
Yeah.
saying you can't own a gun,
Right.
but
Just
if
with
it gets
these
used in
restrictions.
but if it gets used in a shooting, then your manufacturer is going to get sued for, a minimum of 10 grand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
And
think about it.
how many shootings a day happen? Glock's, one of the
Oh my
biggest
God. Yeah.
Glock is one of the biggest suppliers to the police. So what happens, if there's a shooting that occurs, regardless of who does it,
Oh
the police shoot
man.
somebody, that means that, now Glock is on the hook for 10 grand every time the police shoot somebody.
Yeah.
I guess if that's the game you want to play, then okay.
But
You
that,
can either sit down and say banning things doesn't work, or you're going to watch as it becomes financially impossible to do business. Period. End of story.
yeah, that's the one industry insulated from lawsuits is the gun industry. And I always
Right.
said, like, they're regulating abortion with 1,000 cuts that'll kill it. That's what Democrats were going to do with guns. And the more the important thing here is we all lose rights
Yep.
when this fight starts. Like,
Yep.
one of our episodes was called "When the Titans Fight and Fall" because it was about Neil Young and Joe Rogan destroying our listenership. And that's what can happen. It's not like these fights are going to fundamentally protect your rights. Your freedom to choice is just going to come something different when the other side uses it
Mm-hmm.
against you. Like,
Yep.
Joe Biden gets to a Supreme Court nominee. Nobody's expecting him. Why? Because Mitch McConnell created the rules that said, hey, we can do it in 30 days. And so they're going to. Congratulations, Joe Biden, by the way. Supreme Court nominee and killing the head of Al Qaeda. You had a good week.
There you go.
Oh, and the job numbers.
Mm-hmm.
The economy. I asked what was my question here that nobody answered? Is it the pandemic, economy, or society that has been the problem this week? We're wrapping up. We got about 2 minutes
Oh,
left.
I would say that pandemic, just because you still have a lot of people in the hospital, you still have a lot of people dying, you still have a lot of people out sick, and those are all things that are leading to shortages in the labor force.
I'm going to say the economy is better than we think. It's just when you think about inflation from last year, it's incredible because we were at zero last year. So everything costs more, you know what I mean?
Right.
But
So,
if you look over the past 2 years, you'll see that inflation hasn't really gone up as much as it has in the past. So it's a good economy. It's just not enough people have access to it yet.
yep.
And that leaves society. Is there anything you wanted to say as a exit? What do I call it? The final message?
Stop banning shit. It's not working. It doesn't do what you think it does. You're a fucking dipshit if you think that it's going to actually do anything. Stop banning stuff. Stop banning books. That is the dumbest fucking thing ever. Or don't be surprised when, the quote unquote separation of church and state is allowed to take place. And the Bible's banned from the library next to that copy of Mouse that you don't like because you feel uncomfortable, you Nazi fuck.
Yeah, stop banning things. I'll go with that. Love you. Talk to you later. I love it. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Alrighty.
Man. Okay. I'll talk to you.